Hi, I'm Heidi Miller, shameless self-promoter and corporate spokesperson for hire, here to talk to you today about the 4 things you need to know to make your booth the most crowded at the show. So, you've decided to go to a show. You've got your booth packed up and your sales staff flying in, and you're marching right up to the convention center. You've even done your homework and sent out pre-show flyers about your in-booth demonstration, so you know you're going to have a pretty busy booth. And of course, you've hired an excellent spokesperson to give your in-booth demo to show exactly why your widget is the greatest and everyone needs to find out about it and buy it. But how do you make sure that every seat in that presentation is taken? How do you make sure that your in-booth presentations are standing room only? Well, first of all, of course, you need to hire a really great spokesperson. But even with a great spokesperson, how do you make sure that your presentation space doesn't end up looking like this? How do you avoid
empty chairs?
Well, did I mention making sure you have a really great spokesperson? Okay. Great talent aside, rule number 1 is, if you have an in-booth demo, you must have qualified, experienced crowd gatherers. And I don't mean booth babes, I don't mean hostesses. They need to be experienced at crowd gathering in addition to being friendly and engaging. A really great crowd gatherer will walk into your booth and ask you what your 2-second product statement is. Memorize it and be able to repeat it believably to attendees. An experienced crowd gatherer will also ask what your qualifying questions are. Those 1 or 2 questions she can pose to attendees to find out if they're good leads for you. And no, she doesn't have to be tall or blonde, but she does need to be experienced in crowd gathering. If she only asks where to stand, what to hand out, you might want to keep looking. Also, a good crowd gatherer will know to stand in the aisle, not in the booth, and to engage passers-by, give your 2-second statement, and invite them into the presentation. That is, they'll not just ask, hey, do you want to sit down for a presentation? That never works. But actually engage attendees in a brief conversation, ask qualifying questions, and physically walk them over to your presentation space and make sure they have a brochure or information in hand. And rule number 2 is empty chairs make for empty chairs. This is part of what I call the breadcrumb approach. Yeah, like in the fairy tales. In order to get your audience out of the aisles and into your booth, you need to give them a trail of breadcrumbs to follow. As we've seen, you need to have your crowd gatherer walk them into the booth, show them where to go, to the chairs, what to do, sit down, look at the brochure, and if possible, give them something to do while they're waiting. You'll note that these chairs not only have a brochure and credit card CD-ROM, but also a piece of candy. That gives attendees something to fidget with, a specific task, or breadcrumb if you will, to follow while they're waiting for your presentation to start, so they don't feel silly or like they're wasting time. And yes, look, they really will skim over those brochures while they're waiting for your presentation or product demonstration to get started. Rule number 3 is seed the audience. This is all part of the breadcrumb approach. Sometimes attendees will be a little nervous about going into a booth and sitting down at a presentation that has empty chairs, even with flyers and candy on the seats. So don't be afraid to seed the audience with one of your own crowd gatherers or salespeople. Sometimes just one person sitting down can give a passerby psychological permission to pause and check it out. Hey, other people are here, must be cool. At which point your crowd gatherer can walk him or her to a chair, and bingo! You have your first real audience member. Within a minute or 2, it's likely that half or more of the chairs in your presentation space will be filled as other attendees follow those breadcrumbs into your booth. And rule number 4 is the unscanned lead does not exist. No one leaves the booth without a badge scan. Remember those great experienced crowd gatherers you have? Part of their job is to diligently make sure that no leads leave the booth without having their badges scanned, so that every attendee who enjoys your presentation ends up as a qualified lead for you. So there you go, the 4 things you need to know to make your booth the most crowded at the show. Number 1, use experienced crowd gatherers. Number 2, empty chairs make for empty chairs. Fill them with info and goodie breadcrumbs. Number 3, seed the audience if necessary. And number 4, the unscanned badge does not exist. Well, thanks for joining me today. This has been the first vidcast of Heidi Miller, shameless self-promoter and corporate spokesperson for Hire. If you have any questions, comments, or a contract for me to sign, email HeidiM at HeidiMillerPresents.com.